Hey everyone, I wanted to take the time to do a detailed commentary of my recent speedrun of Skeleton Boomerang Vampire Hunter mode. This video is going to be both casual and scripted, and will go over some basic concepts of the game, how RNG works, what I was looking for in the run, as well as what constitutes as a reset to my attempts. To start, let's talk about damage and health. In Skeleton Boomerang, your main source of damage comes from, well, your boomerang, which does 1 point of damage per hit. Common enemies require 1 to 2 hits to kill, and the further you make it in Vampire Hunter mode, the higher the chances are to encounter a purple or red enemy, which have increased health. In the ideal run, I don't kill any enemies besides the mini-bosses which guard the first act of each section of the game. These sections are Weeping Woods, Muertec Temple, Time Tower, and Blood Zone. To increase Hunter's strength, you can pick up blessings throughout the run. There are a variety of upgrades to collect, but the ones which directly increase the damage of the boomerang are Strength Up and Shard Power. Strength Up increases the boomerang strength by 0.5, and Shard Power increases the boomerang strength by 0.1 per 100 shards, maxing out at 3,000 shards and 3 extra points of damage to the boomerang. The speedrun category I have been doing is known as New Game Plus, which allows the player to bring in as many shards as they want into an attempt, as well as purchasing the Mojo Bag in the hub world. At the start of all of my runs, I purchase this Mojo Bag, and bring in 9,499 shards, simply because I don't care about going back and forth just to bring in the full 9999. With this many shards, I will almost always have 3,000 at all times, which gives me the full 3 points of additional damage when I get Shard Power. This is twice as many points of damage added to the boomerang than getting all 3 Strength Up blessings in the upgrade pool, and completely shreds the bosses at the end of each section, in addition to completely skipping phases of the final boss fights. Shown on screen are the health values for all of the bosses in Vampire Hunter mode. Imagine these values divided by 4, and you have the number of hits it takes to defeat that boss from having a maximum Shard Power alone. That being said, however, actually getting Shard Power is the tricky part of the speedrun, as it is part of the highest form of blessing rarity in the upgrade pool. This leads us into the topic of RNG, and what makes Weeping Woods more or less a jail in the speedrun. Since Shard Power is so good, it's worth getting at the very beginning than to wait for it later on. The time saved in the Weeping Woods boss is just so much when compared to beating it without that blessing, that if I don't get Shard Power by the time I reach it, I reset the run. One of the ways that the difficulty balances out in Vampire Hunter mode is with the pool of blessings that you can get throughout an attempt. Normally, you get common blessings at the start, with those blessings being removed from the pool, meaning that the further you get into an attempt, the more likely it is to get a more uncommon and more powerful blessing. There are 4 tiers of blessings: common, uncommon, rare, and paranormal. The percent chance of getting an item from these tiers are 40, 30, 20, and 10% respectively. The way in which RNG decides what blessing you get is done the moment the blessing is created, and works as follows. The game randomly picks a number from 0 to 100. This number determines the tier that a blessing will be picked from. It then randomly picks from all of the blessings that you don't currently have from that tier, and creates that blessing. Hexes, which are the downgrade of the game, and have bad effects, also have a tier system and operate in the same manner. The most common way of obtaining a blessing is done through the 1 to 2 trial rooms which appear in each act. These trials range from killing enemies, to collecting shards, to going through hoops, and it takes up a lot of time. You can also obtain a blessing from coffins which appear in a stage, but it's a very small chance of happening. The same goes for giving 50 shards to the fountain between acts. A faster way of obtaining blessings is to actually bring hexes to the Hector shop, which appears in the second act of every section and Blood Zone. You can acquire a hex from breaking the hourglass in each trial, by talking with a cursed bones, or by passing through or being hit by a cursed enemy. At the cost of some shards, you can do some quick menuing to acquire blessings, which saves time over having to do the trials. Sometimes you can get lucky by encountering a cursed bones or multiple cursed enemies before reaching Hector's shop. In the ideal run, Hector's shop appears after the 2 trials, so that I don't have to double back just to trade a hex. Additionally, Hector's shop offers a random blessing at the cost of blood gems, the more rare form of currency obtained from beating bosses. In New Game Plus, however, you are allowed to have an infinite amount, as given enough time of grinding attempts, you would have more than you need to purchase all of the blessings that are offered. Lastly, Hector's shop has a fountain which gives blessings through a trade of 2 health and some shards. A more risky trade for sure, but the more blessings that you can get before the end of Weeping Woods, the better your chances are of obtaining shard power. Speaking of increasing the blessings you can get before finishing Weeping Woods, there's one bug in the current version of the game that I should address, and it involves that mojo bag that I always buy in the hub world. Normally, mojo bags will remove bad stage effects from the next act. To spice up your playthrough of Vampire Hunter mode, upon entering an act you have a chance to have a stage effect, which can be either good or bad. For instance, you can have bad weather that makes the ground slippery for you and enemies. You can have spikes randomly spawn throughout the act, or all shards scattered throughout the act will be doubled. These are just a few examples, but purchasing the mojo bag removes any bad stage effect from happening. At least, it was supposed to do that. For whatever reason, there's a bug which turns all mojo bags into random blessings if you purchase the one in the hub. This makes going to Nat's shop important at the beginning of a run, as I can damage boost until reaching it, heal myself up, and purchase the Technique and Mojo Bag, now a random blessing, in every act. Techniques are skills which Hunter can use, but have a cooldown before using again. I purchase Techniques until I get Lightning, as I believe it allows for the final boss fights to be beaten even faster. Lightning creates a chain of bolts from the Boomerang to Hunter, and if done properly, can do massive damage, particularly to the second phase of the final boss. Techniques also have a tier system, but work in a slightly different way. There are 5 tiers of techniques, with the first 4 specific to the 4 sections of the game. Nat's shop has a high chance of giving a technique from the section-specific tier, but has a small chance of drawing from the 4th or 5th tier. For example, Tier 1 contains Stop and Ghost and you can only get in Weeping Woods, but Lightning has a chance to appear in any shop. While useful early on, it's not something that I reset over not getting in Weeping Woods. However, something that I do reset on frequently is, well, you may have seen it already in a previous video, but this thing, the Mute Hex, prevents you from buying anything in either shop, so it kills the run almost every time I get it, but it's a risk I have to take in farming hexes from various sources to trade with Hector. Another source of resetting comes in the form of what I call useless New Game Plus blessings, which consist of Magnet and Charisma. Charisma reduces the price of stuff in both shops, and is slightly useful as it provides a cushion from dipping below the 3000 shard mark, but since I just want to get shard power early anyways and skip a lot of trials and purchases later in the run, it's not really useful. Magnet pulls shards to you and your Boomerang, which is obviously not a concern as money is no object in this type of speedrun. At the cost of 100 shards, the fountain between acts can give you a task to complete for the next act, rewarding you with a blessing in the next transition if you completed it. Some of these tasks are complete freebies, such as getting hexed, buying 2 items, and completing the act in a certain time limit. But others are ones which are just a waste of time to complete, such as getting 750 shards, killing 20 enemies, or completing all of the trials. I usually don't reset on a bad task being given, but it doesn't help that I wasted a few seconds waiting for the fountain, as well as 100 shards, just to give me a task that I won't do. A couple of honorable mention type of blessings go to Double Jump, which can be extremely useful in breezing through an act, as you can skip entire portions of the randomly generated terrain. The Double and Triple Boomerang blessings also come in handy for obvious reasons. I don't reset runs from not getting these blessings, and I don't go out of my way in Time Tower and Blood Zone to try and get them, but if I happen to see them in Hector's shop, I'll go for it. That basically covers the ins and outs of how I speedrun Vampire Hunter mode, any % New Game Plus. There's a lot of careful consideration to make in terms of damage boosts to take, and when to stop going into Trials and Hector's shop, and instead just get to the end as fast as possible. Whenever I reach Blood Zone, since it takes a while to load the stage, I take the time to come up with a game plan for making as few pit stops as possible in order to get through and get to the end. I technically only need Shard Power and maybe 2 or 3 other blessings to beat Zanrad so fast that it skips the mid-health coffin attack, saving over 20 seconds, as well as beating Phase 2 before the end of the 3rd attack. I tend to get more blessings in the hope of getting extra health or Bone Bounty, which makes healing items heal an extra point of health, so I can damage boost even more in the later acts and bosses. I honestly think that a sub 13 time is possible, and I put in an hour or 2 daily to try and pull it off. Now you know how I'm gonna do it.